On the 17th of August, 5 people in Sacramento voted unanimously on which tires will be built for sale in California from 2029. Within a day, the internet had a number: 70% of tires gone from the shelves. It is a real number, but not what people took it to mean. It came from one retailer counting products on its own California shelves against a draft that no longer exists. The actual story is quieter than a band. To write this rule, California had to measure 3 things a tire does. 2 of them it measured. For the third, it had to take the tire company's word. And every way out of the rule runs through a number the company writes about itself. Start with the object, because the whole rule follows from it. A tire is one compound of rubber doing 3 jobs that pull against each other. It has to roll cheaply so the engine spends less fuel dragging it. It has to grip a wet road so you can stop. And it has to not wear away so you're not back in the shop next year. Soft rubber grips beautifully and wears out fast. Hard rubber rolls cheaply and lasts and slides when the road is wet. The industry calls this the magic triangle. Improve one corner and you usually pay for it in one of the other 2. That is not a business decision. It is the material, the stickiness that grabs a wet road and the softness that wastes energy are the same behavior in the same rubber. Chemistry has bent the triangle. Nobody has abolished it. So a tire is a compromise, and somebody chooses where it sits. Until this vote in America, that somebody was whoever bought the tire, mostly without knowing they were choosing. California's rule puts a ceiling on how much energy a tire wastes as it rolls and a floor under how well it stops on a wet road. The ceiling arrives in 2 steps. A tire built for sale in the state has to come in under 9 on the scale that measures its drag, and from 2033, under 7.1, which is roughly the average of the tires car makers already fit at the factory. The floor under wet braking is 1.0, which means exactly as good as a standard reference tire. Hold on to that phrasing. It is about to do a lot of work. The price, by the state's own accounting, $1.50 more per tire in the first phase, $6.50 in the second, against about $180 of fuel saved over the life of a set. And the commission's finding on everything else, no adverse trade-offs. 2 of the tires' 3 jobs can be measured by someone who is not selling the tire. Rolling resistance goes on a machine. The tire is pressed against a steel drum, spun up, and the drag is read off directly under an international procedure that fixes the load, the pressure, the temperature. Hand the same tire to a lab in another country, and the same answer comes back. Wet grip works by comparison. That floor of 1.0 does not mean 1 of anything. It means exactly as good as the reference tire, a specific standard tire with a part number that exists for no other purpose than to be what everyone else is measured against. Your tire and that tire run the same wet track on the same day, and the number that comes out is a ratio. That is what lets California write hard numbers here at all. A limit is only a limit if somebody outside the company can check it. On these 2 corners, they can, and the makers broadly agree the thresholds can be met. The third corner of the triangle is tread life, how long the tire lasts. In America, that is measured by a system built in 1979. The manufacturer takes a convoy of cars out to a 400-mile loop of highway near San Angelo in West Texas and runs its own tires alongside a standard reference tire for 7,200 miles. Then it measures the rubber lost, extrapolates the rest of the tire's life, and assigns the grade. The manufacturer runs the test. The manufacturer extrapolates. The manufacturer assigns the number that goes on the sidewall. 7,000 miles is a small fraction of a tire's life, so most of that number was never measured. It is a projection made by the company, checked by nobody. The federal agency sets the procedure and does not verify the result before the tire goes on sale. There are no routine audits. Reporting a grade lower than you measured is expressly allowed. Reporting one higher is not. So a 400 from one brand and a 400 from another are not the same claim about the world. None of that is hidden. It is how the federal rule is written, and the industry has known it for 47 years. California's own staff report says it plainly. Manufacturers are able to underreport the results. Now put the three together and the defect appears. California wrote strict numbers on the two corners with an outside referee. On the third, it could not because there is nothing to write against, but the rule still depends on that third number. It leans on it harder than before because the rule has ways out and they are sensible ones. A tire built to last a very long time gets a looser rolling resistance limit. 0.4 of slack in the first phase, 0.7 in the second, and up to 1.4 for the longest lasting. That is good design. It admits the triangle exists, but the gate to that slack is the tread life grade, the self-run, self-assigned, under-reporting permitted grade. The looser your limit, the more it rests on a number you wrote about yourself. There is a second way out, and it is wider. Winter tires sit outside the rule entirely. No limit, no reporting. Qualifying used to require a judgment call about whether a tire was really meant for winter. In July, the commission struck that, which is ordinarily good practice. It replaces an official's discretion with an objective test. What remains is a snow traction figure and the three-peak snowflake on the sidewall. So light truck all-terrain tires carrying that snowflake are now outside the rule altogether, a segment the commission's own testing put among the worst it measured, on drag and on wet grip alike. That snowflake is awarded on the manufacturer's own test as well, so the wet floor can be checked. Anyone who doubts it can buy the tire and run it against the reference. Nobody can do that with the third number, and the ways out are opened by numbers the maker assigns to its own tire. This is not a conspiracy, and it is not laziness. It is a pattern you can find in almost any rule. The hard number gets written where there is something to measure with, and the compromise migrates to the corner where there is not. The law that gave California this power, passed in 2003, carries an instruction. The commission has to show its standards do not shorten average tire life. So how is that shown? Not with a wear test. No controlled tread life testing was run for this rulemaking. The data came in as those sidewall grades and as one retailer's private mileage model. The commission pooled it, found no meaningful relationship between wear and efficiency, and concluded there was no adverse trade-off. Meanwhile, the tire makers, who have a direct commercial interest here, say the obvious thing. Pushing rolling resistance down costs you tread life. 3 of them asked the commission to pause for that reason. And the Dealers Association, pricing 8 common models, found the cheapest compliant tires run well above the cheapest non-compliant ones, which pushes some buyers toward used tires and toward driving longer on what they have. Both are worse on the wet road the floor was built to protect. And there is one more sentence buried in the cost analysis. The model that produced the savings figure assumes a 4-year tire life. In the world with the rule and in the world without it, the same 4 years in both, which means the model cannot show the harm it is being used to rule out. If the rule did shorten tire life, this calculation would not notice. That is not a wrong answer. It is a question that was not asked. The first design is Europe's, and it is not a swap for California's. It is a low floor with a label above it. Europe has had mandatory minimums for years, a floor under wet grip and a ceiling on rolling resistance. But look where that ceiling sits, 10.5 on the same scale where California is heading for 7.1. It cuts off the worst tail and nothing else. Everything above it is sorted by the label, a grade from A to E for fuel and for wet grip on the price tag. So the buyer picks. The price is that somebody has to read it. By the European Commission's own report this year, 39% of buyers recalled seeing the label at all, down from 50% in 2017, and 3/4 of British drivers simply take whatever the fitter recommends. It works slowly, but a label moves the market at the speed of attention and hands its savings to the people who were already going to read the small print. Or fix the actual defect, give the third corner a referee, an independent, repeatable way to measure how long a tire lasts held by someone other than the manufacturer. International regulators are inching there, writing requirements for the first time for worn tires rather than new ones. The price is high, and here it is in full. Building a test like that takes years, and every tire pays for it in its price. And there is a harder cost underneath. Tread life is where the compromise goes when the other two corners are pinned. Pin the third as well, and the space engineers work in closes from all three sides at once. That is the version where tires really do leave the shelves. For real, not by one retailer's count. And California cannot do this one alone. The tread life system is federal. A state can write its own standard on top of that measurement, but it cannot repair the measurement. It is building on a ruler it is not allowed to fix or regulate what the law that started this actually said. The 2003 statute asked that replacement tires be at least as efficient as factory tires. On average, you could hold each manufacturer's California sales to that average, the way fuel economy rules hold a carmaker's whole fleet instead of holding every single tire to a line. Then the grippy, short-lived, brilliant tire survives as long as the volume around it is efficient. The price comes in three parts. You have to audit sales rather than products, which is a larger machine than testing rubber. The worst tire stays on the shelf, so the argument that a floor protects the buyer who does not know what to look for goes away. And an average is something a company can manage, discount the good model, move more of it, and the number comes right without the bad model changing at all. None of this makes California's rule a bad rule. The fuel savings are real. Most tires on the road already clear the first step, and the commission pushed both deadlines back when the industry objected, which is what listening looks like. It is a rule with a known dependency. Two of its numbers can be checked by anyone. The third cannot, and that is where the ways out are and where the promise about tire life rests, which points at the cheapest design of all and the only one California can build alone. Leave the rule as written and require that the grade opening the slack be confirmed by an independent lab rather than by the applicant. Somebody has to pay for that convoy in Texas. The state cannot repair a federal measurement, but it can decline to let an unchecked number through its own door. So here is the thing worth carrying out, and it is not about tires. When any rule names a number, two questions sit underneath it that almost never make the news. Who runs the test and who checks the answer? If the answer to both is the party being regulated, then what you are looking at is not a limit. It is a promise written in the language of a limit. It may well be kept, but you now know which number to ask about first